there is a truth that many people do not want to hear. Most people do not fail because they set their goals too high. They fail because they set their goals too low and achieve them. And then many years pass. They look back at their lives and feel something that is very hard to describe. Not exactly failure, but not the life they once hoped for either. They have a job, a stable income, a somewhat comfortable life. But deep inside, they know they could have become much more than that. You see, the real tragedy of life is not that we do not achieve what we want. The real tragedy is that we never set goals big enough to force ourselves to grow. Many people set goals based on their current salary, their current circumstances, their current fears. They do not set goals based on their potential. And that is exactly why so many people live their entire lives without ever truly discovering who they could become. I learned an important lesson from my mentor. He said to me, "Jim, goals are not what you achieve. Goals are who you become in the process of pursuing them." When you set a goal big enough, a goal that forces you to think bigger, work harder, be more disciplined, be more courageous, then every step toward that goal will change who you are from the inside. And that is the real power of big goals. Not just to have more, but to become more. In this video, I will share with you 12 powerful principles that will help you set goals that can truly pull you out of mediocrity. Goals that make you grow in mindset, discipline, and character. And stay until the end of the video, because principle number 10 may completely change the way you look at goals and even change the direction of your life. Now, let's begin with the first principle, because everything begins with a simple truth, but very few people truly understand it. Principle 1, goals are not about achievement, they are about transformation. When I was young, I used to think about goals the same way most people do. I thought goals were things you achieve: a higher income, a bigger house, a better car, a better position at work. But after many years of observing life, I realized something far more important. Goals do not exist just to give you a result. Goals exist to change who you are. You see, when someone sets a very small goal, a goal they can achieve without much thinking, without much effort, without changing themselves, then what happens? Maybe they achieve that goal, but after achieving it, their life barely changes, because they never had to become a different person to reach it. I remember when I was a young man working on a farm. At that time, I did not think beyond earning enough money to live, paying the bills, and hoping things would be okay. That is how many people live. It is not because they are lazy. It is not because they lack intelligence. It is because they have never set a goal big enough to force themselves to grow. Then my mentor asked me a very simple question. He asked, "Jim, what is your goal?" I gave very ordinary answers. I said I wanted a stable job. I wanted to earn a little more money. I wanted life to be a little easier. He looked at me and said something I will never forget. He said, "Jim, goals like that will not take you very far." At the time, I did not understand. I thought I was saying very reasonable things. But then he explained something to me that I believe can change the way you look at goals. He said, "Jim, goals are not what you achieve. Goals are who you become in the process of pursuing them." And when I began to think about that, I realized he was absolutely right. A big goal does something very special. It pulls you away from who you are today. If your goal is bigger than your current ability, then you must learn more, be more disciplined, be more courageous, be more persistent. You must become a better version of yourself. And that is the real value of goals. Not the trophy, not the money, not the fame. Because money can come and go, fame can change, and trophies eventually collect dust over time. But who you become in the process will stay with you forever. That is why I always say, do not set goals just to keep yourself busy. Do not set goals just to have a little more comfort. Set goals that force you to expand yourself. Goals that make you look in the mirror and ask, can I really do this? Because those are the goals that awaken your true potential. They make you discover that you can learn more than you think, you can work harder than you believe, and you can become far stronger than the person you are today. So let me ask you a question. Do your current goals force you to grow, or are they just small enough for you to achieve without changing anything at all? Think about that. Because once you understand this first principle, you will begin to see goals in a completely different way. And that leads us to the second principle, a very common mistake that causes many people to set goals that are too small and limit their own lives. Principle 2, think bigger than your current circumstances. There is a mistake I have seen repeated over and over again in many people. They set goals based on their current circumstances instead of setting goals based on their future potential. That is a huge difference, and that difference determines whether your life expands or shrinks. You see, when most people think about goals, they usually begin by looking at their current life. They look at the money in their bank account. They look at their current job. They look at the people around them. They look at their current level of ability. And then they tell themselves, maybe this is as far as I can go. That is how a dream becomes smaller before it even begins. A person with an average salary will set a goal only slightly higher than their current income. A person living in a small environment will only dare to dream small dreams. A person who has failed a few times will begin to believe that their future must be limited by their past. But I want you to remember this. Your current circumstances are not the final measure of your future ability. They are only the starting point, not the finish line. When I was young, if you had looked at my circumstances back then, you probably would not have seen anything special. I did not have plenty of money. I did not have powerful connections. I did not have a glamorous background that would attract attention. I was just a young man trying to get through each day. If I had set my goals completely based on my current circumstances at that time, I might have limited my life to something very small. I might have said, as long as I can get by, that is enough. As long as life is a little easier than now, that is enough. As long as things are stable, that is enough. And those things sound reasonable. But here is the problem. Goals that are too small will never pull you out of your current version of yourself. They do not push you to learn more. They do not push you to train more. They do not push you to raise your standards. They do not push you to see life with a bigger vision. They simply help you survive a little more comfortably, but they do not help you grow. I remember my mentor helping me understand something very profound. He taught me that many people set goals based on the size of their current income, their current fears, their current environment, their current doubts, instead of the size of their dreams. And that is why so many people live smaller lives than their real potential. It is not that they lack ability. They simply lack a vision big enough to force themselves to rise. Think about this. If you only set goals that you are certain you can achieve, what will happen? You will continue doing familiar things. You will continue using old skills. You will continue living within old limits. In other words, you will not truly grow. You will simply repeat yourself in a version that looks busier. But when you set a goal bigger than your current circumstances, something interesting begins to happen. Your mind starts to expand. You begin to think differently. You begin to ask new questions. What do I need to learn to achieve that? Who do I need to meet? What habits must I change? Where do I need more discipline? What must I give up in order to become better? That is when goals begin doing their real work, not giving you a reward, but forcing you to become someone bigger than your current circumstances. I often say that life does not simply respond to what you want. It responds to who you become. And if you keep your goals as small as your current comfort, you will also keep your life as small as that comfort zone. Now, this does not mean you must live in fantasy. I am not saying you should just dream big and ignore reality. No, I am saying you must have a big vision, but walk with disciplined steps. That is the difference. Your goal must be bigger than your present, but your action plan must begin where you stand today. When I began to understand this, I realized that the greatest limitation in a person's life is not their wallet. It is their thinking. Many people can increase their income. Many people can improve their health. Many people can build a much better life. But first, they must allow themselves to think bigger than their current circumstances. That is the first shift, not outside, but inside. I want you to imagine a man standing in a small room, living there so long that he begins to believe the world is only that big. If he has never stepped outside, he will think the ceiling is naturally low. He will think those four walls are the natural limits of life. Many people live the same way inside their minds. They are surrounded by small experiences, small beliefs, small judgments, old failures. Then they call all of that reality, small experience. But today's reality does not have the authority to decide the entire future of tomorrow. The future opens to those who dare to see beyond where they stand. That is why the right goal always makes you a little nervous. It makes you swallow hard for a moment. It makes you wonder whether you are capable or not. And that is not a bad sign. It is often a good one. Because if your goal does not require you to grow, then it is probably not big enough. So ask yourself this. Are the goals you are pursuing truly born from vision, or simply born from your current circumstances? Are you writing your future based on potential, or simply copying the limits of today? Remember this. Do not measure your life by where you stand today. Measure it by who you are willing to become in the next 5 years. Because many miracles in life begin at the moment a person stops asking, "What is realistic for me right now?" and begins asking, "What is possible if I truly grow?" And once you dare to think bigger than your current circumstances, the next thing you must do becomes even more important. You must know exactly what you want, because a big but vague vision will eventually remain just a cloud that cannot guide you. Principle 3. Decide clearly what you truly want. After you begin thinking bigger than your current circumstances, there is another important step that many people skip. You must clearly decide what you truly want. It sounds simple, but I have met many people in my life, and you might be surprised to know that most of them have never truly sat down and decided that. They live their lives in a very familiar state. They know very clearly what they do not want. They say, "I do not want to be poor. I do not want stress. I do not want a job I hate. I do not want life to be as hard as it is now." But here's the problem. A list of things you do not want is not a life plan. It does not give you direction. It does not wake you up in the morning. It does not make your heart beat faster. And it certainly is not strong enough to pull you through difficult days. Real goals must be built from the things you want to become, want to do, and want to experience. I remember the first time I sat down to write my goals. I did not do it very intelligently at the time. I wrote very general sentences. I wrote, "I want to earn more money. I want a better life. I want things to be better." When my mentor looked at that list, he shook his head. He said, "Jim, these are not goals. These are just vague wishes." Then he told me something very important. He said that a goal must be clear, specific, and powerful enough to pull your imagination. You must be able to see it. You must be able to picture your life when it becomes real, because the human mind works in a fascinating way. If you do not clearly know what you are moving toward, you will easily be pulled by circumstances. You will react to life instead of designing it. Imagine boarding a ship with no destination. That ship may travel very far. It may cross many oceans. But in the end, it is still drifting. Many people are living exactly like that. They work hard. They stay busy. They try. But because they do not have a clear picture of what they truly want, all that effort is not focused in a specific direction. I learned that one of the most powerful steps a person can take in life is simply to sit down with a piece of paper and write down what they truly want. Not what society expects, not what other people think is reasonable, but what truly makes your heart feel alive. What kind of person do you want to become? What kind of life do you want to build? What experiences do you want in the coming years? What contribution do you want to make to the world? Questions like these force you to think more deeply about your life. They force you to stop living on autopilot. They force you to look into the future and say, "This is the direction I want to go." Something interesting happens when you do that. When you write your goals clearly, your mind begins to work in a different way. You start noticing opportunities you did not see before. You begin meeting people who can help you move closer to those goals. You begin reading the right books at exactly the moment you need them. You begin seeing the world through the eyes of someone who is building a life instead of someone who is just getting through the day. But this only happens when your goals are clear enough. A vague goal creates a vague life. A clear goal creates a clear direction. So ask yourself this. If I asked you right now, what do you truly want in the next 5 years? Could you answer immediately? Or would you need to stop and think for a long time? The answer to that question will tell you a lot about how much you are designing your life. Because a powerful life always begins with a clear decision. Not a hope, not a vague wish, but a decision that you will not let your life drift randomly. You will choose your direction. And once you clearly decide what you want, the next step is to do something very simple but incredibly powerful. Something that most people think is small but creates a huge difference between dreamers and those who truly take action. Principle 4. Write your goals down after you have begun thinking bigger than your current circumstances, and after you have clearly decided what you truly want. The next step is something very simple. But do not let its simplicity fool you, because this is where many people stop. They think about goals. They talk about goals. They get excited about goals. They imagine a better life, but then they never write it down. And a goal that is never written down most of the time is just a passing thought. It comes and goes. It excites you for one night. Then the next day, everyday life returns. Work returns. Fatigue returns. Bills return. Distractions return. And very quickly, the thing that once made your heart stir gets buried under life's urgent demands. I learned this lesson very early. There was a time in my life when I thought I had a money problem. I thought all I needed was a better income. I thought that if I had more money, everything would be fine. But then I realized the real problem was not just money. The problem was that I had never truly sat down with paper and pen to design my life. I was living in a state of reaction. I reacted to bills. I reacted to circumstances. I reacted to whatever was happening around me. But I had not proactively created a direction for myself. And that was when I was taught a principle that I believe can change a person's entire life. Do not hand your future over to memory. Memory is a good tool, but it is not reliable enough to carry your future on its shoulders. You may remember a few things today, but memory is easily defeated by emotions, by pressure, by old habits, by procrastination, by those days when you are tired and no longer motivated. A goal that exists only in your head is very easy to negotiate with. You can tell yourself, I'll figure it out tomorrow. I'll think more carefully about it next week. I'll start when I have more free time. I'll do it when conditions are better. But when you write your goal down on paper, something completely different happens. At that point, it is no longer just a thought. It becomes a commitment. It looks back at you. It reminds you. It makes it hard for you to pretend that you were never serious about it. I still remember when I started writing my goals down. What changed was not just the list in front of me. What changed was the person holding the pen. Before that, I was someone drifting through life. But in the moment, I sat down and wrote out what I wanted to become, what I wanted to do, what I wanted to have, what I wanted to give. I was no longer someone drifting. I began becoming someone who designs. And there is a huge difference between a person who lives by reaction and a person who lives by design. The reactive person wakes up and lets the day decide their mood. The designer wakes up with a direction. The reactive person lets circumstances tell them what to do. The designer looks at their goals and asks, what do I need to do today to get closer? You see, writing your goals down does not just help you remember. It helps you shape a new identity. It is a declaration that says, I will not let my life drift aimlessly anymore. And I want to tell you this, you do not need to write a perfect list. You do not need to have every word sound right from the beginning. The first time I wrote my goals, I did not do it perfectly either. But perfection is not the most important thing at this stage. What matters is that you begin turning invisible desires into something visible. You pull them out of your imagination and place them in front of your eyes. That is a very powerful act, because when something is written down, it begins to take shape. And when it has shape, you can think about it more clearly. You can revise it. You can make it more specific. You can break it down. You can come back to it on difficult days. You can let it remind you that a bigger life is waiting for you ahead. Many people say they are serious about their future, but if you ask them, have you written your goals down yet? The answer is usually no. And that is worth thinking about, because we usually write down the things we consider important. We write down appointments. We write down tasks. We write down bills to pay. We write down plans for a trip. But we do not write down the direction of our entire life. That reveals something. Many people prefer the feeling of being inspired over the real discipline of living intentionally. Writing your goals down is a small act, but it marks the beginning of personal responsibility. It says, I will not just dream, I will define. I will not just hope, I will commit. I will not just say someday. I will write down that day starting here. And there is one more reason why writing your goals down is so important. It helps you see what is missing. When a goal only lives in your head, it is easy to think everything is fairly clear. But when you write it down, you begin to realize, I am being too vague here. I do not really know what I want in this area yet. I am writing something that sounds good but does not truly touch my heart. That is a good thing, because clarity does not come from thinking more. It comes from facing what you truly want on paper. So ask yourself one simple question. Are your goals still in your head, or are they already on paper? Because if they are only in your head, they are probably still just desires. But once they are on paper, they begin becoming a plan. And from here, there is one more thing you must understand. Goals do not just need to be clear. They also do not just need to be written down. They must also be placed in the right important areas of life. Because if you only have goals in one area while neglecting the others, you may achieve success on the outside while losing wholeness on the inside. Principle 5, create balanced goals for life. After you begin writing your goals down, there is something very important I want you to understand. A good life is not built from just one kind of goal. Many people make this mistake. They put all their energy into only one area of life. Usually, that area is money. They tell themselves, when I make more money, my life will be better, and so they spend most of their time pursuing financial goals. They work more. They try harder. they sacrifice more. And sometimes they actually achieve it. They become successful at work. They earn more money. They can buy things they could not buy before. But then one day they look back at their lives and realize something. They may have won at work, but lost in other parts of life. They may be richer, but their health has declined. They may be more successful, but their relationships have grown distant. They may have achieved fame, but feel empty inside. I have met many people like that in my life, and it made me realize an important truth. Real success must be balanced success, not just in one area, but across the whole of life. That is why when I began writing my goals, I did not write only about money. I divided my goals into different parts. I asked myself questions like, what kind of person do I want to become? Not just professionally, but in character. I wanted to become a more disciplined person, a more responsible person, a person with broader vision, a person with the ability to lead and inspire others. Then I asked myself, what do I want to do in this life? Where do I want to go? What do I want to learn? What do I want to experience before life comes to an end? Then I asked, what do I want to have? A stable life, a strong family, a meaningful career, a level of financial freedom that allows me to choose how I live. And finally, I asked myself a question that many people often forget. What do I want to give? Because if life revolves only around accumulating things for yourself, at some point you will realize that it does not bring lasting fulfillment. A goal about giving, helping others, contributing to the community, creating value for society will pull you into becoming a larger person. And what is interesting is that when you set goals in many areas of life, your life begins to feel richer. You no longer live only for a number in your bank account. You begin to care about personal growth. You begin to care about health. You begin to care about relationships. You begin to care about making a positive mark on the world. A balanced life does not mean everything is always perfect. There will always be seasons when one area needs more attention. But when you have goals in different areas, you are less likely to trade your entire life away just to achieve one kind of success. I often say that it is a tragedy when someone achieves great career success but fails in family life, or achieves great wealth but loses their health, or becomes famous but no longer has genuine relationships. A good life is not a life that wins in only one area. It is a life that wins in many areas at once. So when you write your goals, do not write only about one area. Look at your whole life. Ask yourself, how do I want to grow personally? What relationships do I want to build? What achievements do I want to reach? And what contribution do I want to make to the world? When you set goals that way, you are not just building success. You are building a complete life. But there is one more important thing you must understand. Even if you have wonderful goals, even if you have written them down, even if they are placed in the right areas of life, there is still a very large gap between goals and results. That gap is built by something many people do not like to hear: daily discipline. Because big goals are not achieved in one day. They are built from small actions repeated every day. Principle 6. Big dreams require daily discipline. After you set big goals for your life, there is a truth you must accept. A big goal will never be achieved by inspiration alone. Inspiration may help you begin, but only daily discipline will help you continue. Many people have wonderful dreams. They talk about changing their lives, building a career, becoming wealthier, becoming healthier, becoming a better version of themselves. But after a while, those dreams gradually fade, not because they are impossible, but because they are not supported by small actions repeated every day. You see, between vision and results, there is always a bridge, and that bridge is built with habits. $1 million goal is not achieved with $10 habits. A healthy body is not built with weak choices. A respected career is not created from shallow actions. Every great result in life is built from small actions. I remember when I began writing bigger goals for my life. At first, I was very excited. I felt as though I had just opened a new door. But very quickly, I realized something. A big goal by itself does not change your life. What changes your life is what you do every day because of that goal. My mentor taught me a principle I have never forgotten. He said, do not begin with motivation. Begin with method. Because motivation can come and go. There are days when you feel full of energy, but there are also days when you feel tired. There are days when everything seems easy, but there are also days when everything becomes much harder. If you only act when you feel motivated, you will have a hard time going far. But if you build a disciplined system, you can keep going even when your emotions are not perfect. When I set big goals for myself, I began asking very simple questions. If I want to become more successful, what habits do I need to build? If I want financial freedom, what do I need to learn about money? If I want to become a leader, what do I need to read, learn, and practice? I began looking at my life and realized that big changes do not come from one great act. They come from small actions repeated long enough. One page of reading today, one extra phone call today, a small amount of saving today, one workout today, one difficult but necessary conversation today. Those things may seem small, but when they are repeated day after day, they begin shaping who you are. You become more disciplined. You become stronger. You become more dependable. And what is interesting is that the inner change often happens before the outer results appear. You become a disciplined person before you become wealthy. You become a healthy person before your body changes visibly. You become a person of influence before the world knows your name. Becoming always comes before having. That is how life works. So if you have a big goal, do not just ask, "What is my goal?" Ask, "What habits must exist in my life for that goal to become real?" If your goal is financial freedom, you must learn how to save, invest, and manage money. If your goal is good health, you must build the right habits of eating, movement, and rest. If your goal is to become a person of influence, you must learn how to read, study, listen, and communicate. Every goal requires a corresponding set of habits. And when those habits become part of your daily life, your goal is no longer a distant dream. It becomes a clear direction. But I must also tell you this: discipline is not always comfortable. It often requires sacrifice. You must trade a little comfort today for a better future tomorrow. You must say no to a few short-term pleasures to build a long-term result. And many people do not like that trade. They want big results, but do not want to pay for them with small daily actions. But life does not work that way. Every small choice you make each day is like a vote for the person you are becoming. If you consistently choose discipline, you are voting for a stronger future. If you consistently choose ease, you are voting for a smaller life. So look at your daily habits, because your habits today are building your life tomorrow. But even if you have the right habits, you will still face another challenge. A challenge every big goal must face. It is the moment when life begins pushing back. It is the moment when difficulties appear. Principle 7. Never shrink the dream. After you begin pursuing a big goal, there will be a moment that almost everyone must face. It is when life begins pushing back. At first, everything may feel exciting. You set a goal. You write it down. You feel full of motivation. You start changing your habits. You start reading more, working harder, becoming more disciplined. But then one day, reality shows up. Things become harder than you thought. Work does not move forward as quickly as you hoped. The people around you are not always supportive. There are days when you feel tired. There are days when you doubt yourself. And that is the dangerous moment, not because your goal is wrong, but because this is when many people begin doing something they think is reasonable. They shrink their dream. They tell themselves, maybe that goal is too big. Maybe I should set a more realistic goal. Maybe I should lower my standards a little. On the surface, that may sound wise, but many times it is only a very subtle way of avoiding growth. I have seen this happen to many people. They begin with a big vision. They say they want to change their lives. They want to build a meaningful career. They want to create a better life for their family. But when the first challenges appear, instead of becoming stronger, they begin shrinking the goal. They move the finish line closer so that when they reach it, they can say they finished the race. But do you know what happens when you do that? You may reach the finish line, but you do not reach growth. And growth is the real reward of a big goal. My mentor once said something to me that I always remember. He said, "Do not wish life were easier. Wish that you were better." That is the difference between two ways of thinking. One way tries to make life smaller and easier. The other tries to make you bigger and stronger. One makes you weaker. The other helps you grow. Imagine a rubber band. If you leave it lying on the table, it has almost no value. But when you stretch it, it begins to become useful. It can hold things together. It can create force. It can do things it could not do before. Human beings are the same way. We truly begin using our abilities only when we are stretched by big goals. When the goal forces you to learn more, forces you to be more patient, forces you to be more courageous, forces you to move beyond your old limits. That is when you begin discovering abilities you did not know you had. So when difficulties appear, and they certainly will, you have two choices. You can say, "My goal is too big," or you can say, "I need to become bigger to achieve that goal." Those two ways of thinking will lead to two completely different lives. One life will gradually shrink. The other will keep expanding. And I want to ask you a question. In recent months, has there been anything in your life that made you want to give up on a big goal? Was it a small failure? A criticism? A temporary difficulty? If that has happened, remember this. Difficulty is not a sign that you should shrink your dream. Very often, it is only a sign that you are heading in the right direction. Because any goal big enough to change your life will also be big enough to challenge you. So do not shrink your dream. Expand yourself. Learn more. Work harder. Become more disciplined. Become more patient. And over time, you will begin noticing something very interesting. The things that once scared you gradually become normal. The challenges that once made you doubt gradually become part of your growth journey. That is the power of big goals. They do not just change your results. They change who you are. But there is something else interesting I want you to understand. Big goals do not just make you grow. They also create a very special kind of energy in your life. A kind of energy that small goals rarely create. Principle 8. Big goals create big energy. There is something interesting I realized after many years of observing people. Small goals rarely awaken great energy. A goal that is too safe usually does not make your heart stir. It does not make you wake up earlier. It does not make you think more. It does not make you feel that you are pursuing something truly worthwhile. It only keeps you busy. And there is a huge difference between being busy and being purposeful. Many people live in a state of busyness. They work every day. They solve problems. They complete tasks. They run from one thing to another. But if you ask them, what are you building over the next 5 years? Many of them will not have a clear answer. That is because small goals are not powerful enough to create a big vision. They do not activate all the energy inside you. But when a person sets a truly big goal, something very different begins to happen. Suddenly, their mind becomes more alive. They begin thinking more. They begin reading more. They begin observing the world around them with a new curiosity. They begin seeing opportunities in places they did not notice before. A big goal is like a magnet. It pulls your energy in one direction. It organizes your thinking. It organizes your time. It organizes your efforts. When there is no goal, life often becomes random. You work out of habit. You react to circumstances. You get pulled around by urgent things. But when you have a big goal, you begin asking a very different question. Am I getting closer to this goal? That question changes how you use your time. It changes the things you say yes to and the things you begin saying no to. I remember when I started setting bigger goals for my life. At first, they seemed a little crazy. I thought about becoming a speaker. I thought about traveling around to share ideas. If you had looked at my circumstances at that time, you probably would have said that was unrealistic. I had no fame, no platform, no major connections. But what was interesting was that when I allowed myself to think a little bigger, I began to feel a new source of energy. I started reading more. I started learning how to communicate better. I started paying attention to how successful people spoke and thought. No one forced me to do those things. The goal itself pulled me. That is the power of a goal that is big enough. It does not have to keep forcing you. It pulls you forward. Small goals often require a great deal of discipline because they do not create much inspiration. But big goals often carry their own kind of energy. They make you feel that you are living for something meaningful. And when people feel their life has meaning, they can work much harder. They can endure difficulties much longer. They can be more patient through challenges. But there is also something important you must understand here. A big goal does not mean a vague goal. If a goal is only a distant dream without structure, it can make you feel overwhelmed. You may look at it and think, this is too big. I do not know where to start. And when that happens, the initial motivation can turn into discouragement. That is why a big goal must always be paired with a very important principle. You must learn how to break it down. You must turn a big vision into action steps you can take every day. Otherwise, the goal will remain in the sky like a beautiful cloud but never touch the ground of real life. So ask yourself one question. Do the goals you are pursuing make you feel alive? Do they make you feel that you are moving towards something bigger than yourself? Or are they only small enough not to make you uncomfortable? Because the right goal usually brings two feelings at the same time. It excites you, and it makes you a little afraid. If you only feel comfortable, that goal is probably not big enough. But if you feel both excited and challenged, there is a good chance you are standing right where growth begins. And when you have a big goal like that, the next step is to learn how to turn it into a clear path. A path you can walk one step at a time instead of trying to leap straight to the finish. Principle 9. Break big goals into small steps. When you begin setting big goals for your life, there is a feeling that almost everyone has experienced. It is the feeling of being overwhelmed. You look at your goal and think, "This is amazing, but where do I start?" A big goal can be very inspiring, but if it is not broken down into specific steps, it can also make you feel as if you are standing in front of a mountain that is too high. You look up at the top and the distance feels too great. And when that distance feels too great, many people begin losing motivation, not because they do not want to achieve the goal, but because they do not see a clear path to get there. That is why a big goal always needs a very important principle. You must learn how to break it down. I still remember when I first set a major financial goal for my life. To be honest with you, at that time the goal sounded almost crazy. I was struggling financially. I did not even have enough money to pay a few small bills. And then I began thinking about one day becoming a millionaire. If I looked only at that number, it was too big. It made me feel as though it was almost impossible. But my mentor taught me a very simple principle. He said that a big goal is not achieved with one giant leap. It is achieved with many small steps. He told me that if you want to reach a big goal, begin with one very small but very specific step. If your goal is $1 million, you do not need $1 million today. You only need to begin with $10, then 100, then 1,000, then 10,000. Each small step does two things. First, it makes the goal feel more realistic. You are no longer looking at a giant number. You are looking at one small step you can take today. Second, each small step creates confidence. When you complete one small step, your mind begins believing, "I can do this." That belief is very important. Because many people give up on big goals, not because the goals are wrong, but because they do not believe they are capable of reaching them. But when you begin moving forward step by step, that belief is gradually built. You begin seeing progress. You begin feeling that you are moving. And progress is one of the strongest sources of motivation a person can feel. The human mind loves seeing progress. One page read, a small amount of money saved, one workout completed, one new skill learned. Small wins like these create the feeling that you are getting closer to your goal. And what is interesting is that when you keep accumulating those small steps, one day you will look back and realize that you have gone much farther than where you started. Most big successes in life are built this way, not with one giant leap, but with hundreds, even thousands of small steps. One page a day can turn you into a deeply knowledgeable person in a few years. A small amount of savings each month can turn into financial freedom over many years. One workout each day can completely transform your health over time. Small steps may seem insignificant in a single day, but over many years they create extraordinary results. That is why when you look at a big goal, do not let yourself become overwhelmed. Do not ask, "How will I accomplish all of this?" Ask, "What is the smallest step I can take today?" Because the longest journey always begins with one step. And when you keep taking one step at a time, the goal that once seemed far away will gradually become something entirely possible. But even when you have a big goal, and even when you have broken it down into action steps, there is still one thing everyone must face: obstacles. Because any goal worth pursuing will meet resistance. And the way you respond to those obstacles will determine whether you keep moving forward or not. Principle 10. Obstacles are part of the stretch. When you begin pursuing a goal big enough to change your life, there is one thing you must prepare yourself to accept. There will be obstacles. Not sometimes, not maybe, but certainly, many people begin a new journey with a mistaken expectation. They think that if their goal is right, if their intentions are good, if they are truly serious, then things will gradually become easier. But life does not work that way. The reality is this: every big goal comes with resistance. Every big dream is tested. Every time you try to rise beyond your old self, something in life will push back. It may be circumstances. It may be fear. It may be old habits. It may be doubt from other people. It may even be the voice inside your own head. And if you do not understand this from the beginning, it becomes very easy to misread those obstacles. You will think, maybe I am not suited for this. Maybe this goal is too big. Maybe this is a sign that I should stop. But very often, obstacles are not a sign that you should stop. They are a sign that you are entering the territory of growth. I still remember the early years when I began trying to change my life. Nothing was as smooth as I had imagined. Money was still a source of pressure. The bills still came. Old habits still pulled me backward. And there were days when I felt as if every step forward was followed by 2 steps back. I used to think maybe life was working against me, but then I learned a very important truth. Obstacles are not sent to stop you. They are sent to train you. They are asking you one very simple question: how badly do you really want this? Because talking about goals when everything is going well is easy. Being disciplined while inspiration is still high is easy. Keeping faith before you face real difficulty is easy. But when obstacles appear, everything starts becoming clear. That is when you find out whether you only like the idea of a better life or whether you are truly willing to pay the price to build it. I have seen many people with potential, smart, capable, full of opportunity. But after a few rejections, they pull back. After a few criticisms, they begin doubting themselves. When results come more slowly than expected, they conclude that their efforts are not working, not because they lack ability, but because they have not understood the true role of obstacles. Obstacles are not a random part of the journey. They are part of the journey. You cannot become stronger without going through weight. You cannot become more patient without going through delay. You cannot become more resilient without going through pressure. So, instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" maybe you should ask, "What is this forcing me to develop?" That is a far more powerful question. It moves you from the position of a victim to the position of someone who is growing. It makes you stop complaining about difficulty and start learning from it. My mentor once taught me a principle that I believe everyone should carry for life. He said, "Do not wish for fewer problems. Wish for more skills." That is a completely different way of seeing things. Most people want the path to become easier, but a mature person understands that the value is not in the road becoming easier. The value is in becoming stronger yourself. If you want to speak better, you will have to move through shyness. If you want to do better in business, you will have to move through rejection. If you want to live with more discipline, you will have to move through the temptation of old habits. There is no path to growth that does not go through resistance. Think about the muscles of the human body. They only grow when they face weight. Without resistance, there is no growth. Your inner life works the same way. Your resilience grows only when it is placed under pressure. Your perseverance grows only when it keeps going on days that are not easy. Your confidence grows only when you do something difficult enough times to realize that you can get through it. That is why I say that obstacles are part of the stretch. A stretch goal does not only pull you toward a bigger result, it also pulls you through bigger challenges. And those very challenges make you more suited for the future you are pursuing. Now, this does not mean you will never feel discouraged. It does not mean you will never feel tired. It does not mean you will never doubt. You will have days like that. Everyone does. But what separates the person who keeps growing from the one who returns to an old life is not that they avoid difficulty. It is that they do not let difficulty define their final decision. They may slow down, but they do not quit. They may adjust, but they do not shrink themselves. They may rest to regain strength, but they do not turn their back on the direction they chose. And there is something else you must understand. Not every obstacle appears in the form of a great tragedy. Many times, obstacles appear in very ordinary forms: procrastination, distraction, fatigue, a chaotic schedule, a negative conversation, a few days of lost rhythm, a little disappointment from not seeing results yet. Small things like these, if not handled properly, can quietly weaken an entire major journey. So learn to look at obstacles correctly. Do not exaggerate them, but do not dismiss them either. Face them like someone who understands. This is not the end. This is the workout. If you begin seeing every difficulty as part of life's training program, you will no longer be easily knocked down by temporary obstacles. You will begin standing more firmly, more deeply, more calmly. And little by little, what once felt like an obstruction will become the thing that builds your strength. So I want to ask you a question. What obstacle in your life right now is making you hesitate? And more importantly, are you seeing it as evidence to give up or as an opportunity to grow? Your answer to that will determine a great deal about your future. Because the winner is not the person who never faces obstacles. The winner is the person who learns how to move through them without losing the vision. But in order to do that over the long term, you need one more thing. You need to see that you are making progress. You need a way to remind your mind that your effort is not being wasted. Principle 11, track your progress. When you are pursuing a big goal, there is something very important that many people often overlook. It is tracking your progress. Many people have goals. They have motivation. They have good intentions. But they do not have any way to see that they are moving forward. And when people cannot see progress, it becomes very easy for them to start doubting themselves. They begin thinking that all their effort is making no difference. They begin thinking they are standing still. They begin losing patience. But there's an interesting truth about the human mind. Your mind loves seeing progress. Even very small progress can create great motivation. One box checked on a to-do list. One page of a book finished. A small amount of money saved. One workout completed. One skill improved a little. Those things may seem small, but to the human mind, they are signals that say, I am moving forward. And when you feel that you are moving forward, you are much more likely to keep taking action. I learned this when I began building new habits in my life. At first, the change was very small. There was no giant leap, no immediate breakthrough moment, just small actions repeated every day. But when I began recording those actions, something interesting happened. I began seeing a pattern of progress. Yesterday I read a few pages. Today I read a few more. Last week I saved a small amount. This week I saved more. Last month I started a new habit. This month I am maintaining it better. Those small steps of progress began creating a very important feeling. It was the feeling that my life was moving in the right direction. You see, many people give up not because they are not making progress, but because they do not realize that they are making progress. If you do not track your journey, everything can feel as if it is standing still. But when you record your small steps, you begin realizing that change is happening little by little. And that is very important, because the journey toward a big goal is rarely a perfect straight line. There will be days when you move quickly. There will be days when you move slowly. There will be days when you feel like you made no progress at all. But when you look back over the whole journey, you will see that those small steps are accumulating, like compound interest. One small change today may seem insignificant, but when it is repeated hundreds of times, the result becomes enormous. That is why I advise people to keep a simple way of tracking their progress. You can write down your important habits. You can record the small goals you have completed. You can track your progress in finances, health, learning, or career. It does not need to be complicated. It just needs to be enough for you to look back and say, I've come a long way. And when you see that, your confidence will begin rising. Because confidence does not come only from positive thinking. Confidence comes from evidence. Evidence that you have done something before. Evidence that you can continue. Evidence that your efforts are not being wasted. So when you track your progress, you are building something very powerful. You are building belief in yourself. And when a person begins to believe they can make progress, they begin setting higher standards for themselves. They begin believing that their goal can truly become reality. But even when you have a clear goal, even when you have broken it down, even when you have built the habits and tracked your progress, there is still one final step, a step that many people delay for far too long. It is the moment when you must truly decide, not just think, not just talk, but decide that your life will no longer continue drifting the way it did before. And that is exactly where we come to the final principle. Principle 12, stop drifting, decide to design your life. After all the principles we have talked about, there's one very simple truth I want you to remember. Your life will not change until you truly decide to change it. Not when you listen to one more inspirational talk, not when you read one more book, not when you create one more new plan. All of those things can help, but they are not what creates the turning point. The turning point happens when a person truly decides, I have met many people in my life, people who are very intelligent, people with a great deal of potential, people who say they want to change their lives, but deep inside they still have not truly decided. They still leave themselves a way out. They say, I'll try. I'll see how things go. If it doesn't work out, I'll do something else. Those statements sound reasonable, but they often hide something, a lack of real commitment. When you leave too many escape routes open, part of your mind will always be facing those roads. When things become difficult, when results do not come as quickly as you hoped, when you experience a few failures, your mind will begin whispering, maybe I should go back. Maybe this is not for me. Maybe I should choose the easier path. That is how many people return to their old lives. Not because they are not capable enough, but because they never truly closed the door behind them. My mentor once told me something that I think many people need to hear. He said there are two kinds of people in life. One kind drifts. The other kind designs. The drifter lets circumstances decide their life. They follow whatever happens. They react to life. They wait for opportunity. They wait for the perfect time. But the perfect time rarely appears. And while they are waiting, the years pass. On the other hand, the person who designs their lives in a very different way, they decide what they want. They write their goals down. They build habits. They accept obstacles. They keep moving forward even when everything is not perfect. They do not wait for life to give them permission to begin. They begin. I still remember a point in my life when I realized I was living like a drifter. I had no clear plan. I had no specific goals. I was only hoping that things would get better over time. But hope is not a strategy. If you drift, you will always drift toward the wrong shores. And that was when I decided to change the way I was living. I sat down with a piece of paper. I began writing down goals that made me feel both excited and a little afraid. Financial goals, career goals, goals about the person I wanted to become. At that time, I did not know exactly how everything would unfold. But I knew one thing. I did not want to keep drifting. And that decision changed many things in my life. Not in one day, not in 1 month. But over time, each small decision began to accumulate. Each habit began to form. Each small step forward began to open new opportunities. And one day, you look back and realize that your life has gone very far from where it started. Not because you were luckier than other people. Not because you were more special than other people, but because you decided not to live a drifting life. So let me ask you a very direct question. Are you living like a drifter or like someone who is designing their life? Are you letting circumstances write your story, or are you holding the pen? Because in the end, the difference between an ordinary life and an extraordinary life often begins with a single decision. The decision that you will not keep postponing, will not keep waiting, will not keep living beneath your potential, but that you will begin today, because time does not stop. Life does not wait. And if you have dreams in your heart, you cannot keep saying someday. Someday very easily becomes never. So choose today. Write down your goals. Begin with the first small step. And let your goals pull you into becoming the person you are capable of becoming. Because as I always say, if you want more in life, you must become more. And the fastest way to become more is to set a goal big enough to pull you out of your old self. Your life can change greatly over the next few years. But it begins with one simple decision. Will you keep drifting, or will you decide to stretch yourself into becoming more? Now, pause for a moment and think about what we have just talked about. We have talked about setting goals big enough to pull you out of your old version of yourself. We have talked about writing goals down, breaking them down, building daily discipline, accepting obstacles, tracking progress, and finally deciding not to live a drifting life anymore. You see, goals are not just about achieving something. Goals are about who you become in the process of pursuing them. A big goal will force you to think bigger, learn more, become more disciplined, become more patient, become stronger. And over time, you will begin realizing that the most valuable thing you gain is not only the result. The most valuable thing is the new version of yourself, a person who is more mature, more confident, more responsible for their own life. So the real question is not, will you achieve all your goals or not? The real question is, who will you become on that journey? Because as I often say, setting goals is not just to have more. Setting goals is to become more. And if there's one thing in today's video that made you think, I want you to do one very simple thing. Take a piece of paper and write down one big goal you want to pursue over the next few years. A goal that makes you feel both excited and a little challenged. Then begin with the first small step. Do not wait for perfection. Do not wait for the ideal moment. Start where you are standing. If this video brought value to you, please hit like, subscribe to the Jim Rohn Treasures channel, and share this video with a friend who also wants to change their life. And I want to ask you one question before we finish. What is the biggest goal you want to achieve over the next few years? Share it in the comments. I would love to hear from you. You and I both have a very special gift. That is today. Use it wisely, and I will see you again in the next video.